The Cuphead Show Season 2, every episode breakdown and review. The second season of The Cuphead Show has returned to our screens after only a few months. In Season 2, we got 13 episodes that contained one that had the longest runtime that we've seen before. With the new season being released, I thought I'd break down and review every episode that was part of the new installment. So let's get into it. Here is the Cuphead Show Season 2, every episode breakdown and review. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Season 2 of the show picked up directly after the events of what occurred at the end of Season 1, with Cuphead and Mugman being thrown in jail after robbing the cookie factory. So episode 1 started off right there. I'm going to break this video down into every episode of the show. Episode 1, Jailbroken. The first episode was a great introduction to refamiliarizing us to what happened at the end of Season 1 when they were arrested at the cookie factory. It looked like they'd been in prison for around 30-something days, judging by the chalk on the wall. We also had the referencing of Miss Chalice being the person who got them into the mess, and we saw them spending their time in prison as a fun episode that focused on them having multiple escape plans. Whilst this was happening, we also saw the characters' differences shining through and set up the season, in the sense that we had Mugman being the more sensible one in keeping his head down and just trying to do the time, whilst Cuphead was failing miserably at trying to escape, even when doing a Shawshank Redemption digging behind a poster method. We saw some interesting characters in the prison, but I think my favourite had to be Miss Cyclops, who ultimately came through for the brothers and threw them out of the jail when their planned escape went slightly wrong. It was a great introduction to Season 2, and picked up from the first season well, but also provided a lot for the second season to build upon. Episode 2, Charmed and Dangerous. Charmed and Dangerous was the perfect title for what occurred in this episode. We saw the resentment that the brothers held towards Miss Chalice for getting them sent to prison, which then led to her arriving at the cottage with a mob after she was charming innocent civilians out of things. Chalice has the ability to do a dance, and it essentially gets the recipient to let her do whatever she wants, which now they were all out of the trance, they wanted paying for everything that she'd taken. We saw the three of them go off and spend the day having fun, when the mob then arrived at the cottage and were going to take all of their anger and rage out on Mugman and Cuphead, due to her escaping whilst they were reasoning with them. But we then saw Ghost Chalice appear, a form she can take on which she then used to scare the mob into running away. I thought this episode was okay. It didn't have too much at stake, and we got our only glimpse of Hilda Berg, which was a shame, because I wanted her to have more of a prominent role this season. But I'm hoping we'll get to see her next season. We also got to see Sergeant Gumbo Gumball as part of the mob, which I thought was a nice touch. Episode 3, A High Seas Adventure. A High Seas Adventure was the longest ever episode we've had in the Cuphead show, and it was definitely worth it. After witnessing the brothers enter a ship and accidentally setting it loose into the ocean, we saw Captain Brinybeard appear and take them on a mission to go and see Carla Maria, as he wanted to ask her to be his girlfriend. She's a familiar boss in the Cuphead universe, and a powerful one at that, and I'd say that was definitely reflected in the show. We've not seen an individual as strong as what she'd been other than the devil, I'd say. After they arrived there, Brinybeard got turned into stone, and the episode then became about the brothers informing Carla Maria of his love for her, which it looked as though she was going to reciprocate because of the sweets that were brought for her. But it turned out, even after he was able to break out of the stone form that she transformed him into, which nobody had ever been able to do, she wasn't interested, and they had to evade her before she ate them all. This was an episode that I definitely felt like it had a lot at stake, provided a lot of humor, and allowed us to see the brothers in a genuinely vulnerable position. Carla Maria was a great boss to include in this episode, and you really felt the power that she held and the frightening nature that she had. Episode 4, Another Brother. This episode was again one sandwiched between two bosses that put the brothers in a scary position. With Mugman being too sensible, we saw Cuphead go off and find another brother, and this was the Crazy Bowl Boy, who was a creepy character that was even more extreme than Cuphead. We saw the brothers part way temporarily, and we saw Mugman also paired with somebody new, but he was an extremely boring and cautious individual. So both Cuphead and Mugman had extreme versions of their personality, and it almost exposed them for how hard it is being with somebody even more extreme than them, despite it being polar opposites. I thought it was a good way of leading into the different personality traits. I liked how haunting Bowl Boy was, And the fact that even right at the end, after all of them got injured, he was in the hospital quoting his line of having some tricks up his sleeve. This was a good, intimate episode. Episode 5, Sweet Temptation. This was an episode that I really liked. We got to see Baroness Von Bon Bon, and she was a haunting individual that came across as insane. Seeing Sugarland on screen as well was something like a dream, in the sense that it's a place that any kid would love to spend a day. We saw Cuphead go there after being thrown out after eating Mugman's candy from Halloween, which was 11 months ago, and he was told 2 rules when he entered Sugarland: to not tell anybody about Sugarland, and to not take a bite out of her castle. With this being the Cuphead show, it certainly didn't last long. We saw Cuphead tell Mugman about the place, and when they were about to leave after feasting upon a lot there, we saw Mugman take a bite out of Baroness Von Bon Bon's castle, which then enabled it to transform into Whippet Cream Puff and go after the brothers. She stated how she didn't eat children like in Hansel and Gretel that was referenced earlier on in the episode, but we saw her transform both of them into sweet treats. We saw an epic escape from the brothers that was similar to how you would expect to see it in the game, where it was right up until the wire, with them almost getting caught, but making it back to the safety of the cottage, although Elder Kettle did want to nibble. I really liked this episode, and it could be one of my favourites of the season, as I feel we really got to see the threat of the boss, her world, and also see Cuphead and Mugman fully immersed within it. Episode 6, The Ice Cream Man. The Ice Cream Man was a funny episode that I thought was relatively relatable, faking being ill so you could have the day off from doing errands when realistically you just want to have a relaxing day to yourself. We saw Mugman do this in order to read his book that focused on Mugbeard and his love for a woman that's personified by Carla Maria. As he was reading his book, we saw him get interrupted by the Ice Cream Man constantly playing his music outside and asking if he wanted the flavor of the day, and then when approached by Mugman, he would leave and then return again, repeating the cycle. I was in pieces when this was happening, because it was at the point when Mugbeard was going to kiss the girl he was in love with, and every time it would take Mugman right out of the moment. We saw him attack the Ice Cream Man, where he ended up driving off for good and not returning. However, upon Mugman looking to read his book again, his mental state impacted the story, and the kiss wouldn't go ahead. This was because deep down, Mugman is a good person, and you can tell that he didn't want to be mean. We saw Mugman embark on a hunt to find the Ice Cream Man, when he did come across him, but it looked as though he'd gone crazy and was now driving after him. When he approached the cottage, we saw that he actually wanted to thank Mugman. He made fun of his hat earlier on, and it led the Ice Cream Man to go and purchase a new one that was at the same angle, but just slightly smaller. As well as that, he ended up spoiling the ending of the book that Mugman was reading, which is often the most annoying thing that somebody can do, so it was rather fitting for this annoying character to do just that. It was a funny episode that had a classic style of comedy in the sense that the same thing being repeated over and over again gradually gets funnier and funnier due to the reaction of the individual. Episode 7, Piano Lesson. Piano Lesson to me felt a little like a filler episode. There were elements of humour within it, in the sense that despite Mugman being the person that was taking the piano lessons, Cuphead was just naturally gifted at it, and was far superior on the instrument. We saw the piano teacher Ludwig get mesmerized by Cuphead's abilities, to the point where he stole his piece of music that he composed and won the competition that Mugman was originally going to compete in. But instead, he entered himself and won the $10,000 prize. Mugman's jealousy was something that was the main thing to be noted in this episode, where he set up a piano to fall on Cuphead during the recital, but in the end, it ended up hitting Ludwig. It was an episode that was relatively separate to the overarching story, but it was enjoyable nonetheless. Episode 8, Release the Demons. I really liked this episode. It was the first time we saw the devil in season 2 of the show, and we saw it focusing on the devil wanting to summon his finest demons in order to capture Cuphead, to allow the devil to take his soul, something he was owed from season 1. This was one of our first true connections back to the story of season 1, and the true overarching story that we saw in the Cuphead game. The devil did summon his finest demons, but we saw him obliterate them all whilst getting angry, and essentially providing a recap of what happened in season 1. After destroying them, we saw him get his second finest team, where the same thing happened again. This then led to his third finest to be the ones that were sent on the job. They were extremely incompetent, and King Dice being there essentially used them all to take each other out, as he wanted to be the one who returned Cuphead to the devil. As it was going badly, we saw the four horsemen then enter the maze where Cuphead was avoiding all of the demons as they blended into the theme of it, and they even failed at their job too, due to the fact that the horse that made Cuphead scared the year before was the very thing that made them scared to the point where the horses ran away. King Dice was also left frozen as he couldn't believe his eyes. With everybody failing, the devil went to the cottage to get Cuphead himself, but it turned out that he didn't have the authority to take Cuphead's soul anymore, as it had been over 30 days, and that's the time period that he laid claim on the soul. Stickler of all people informed him, which I thought was hilarious, so there's now no obligation for the devil to take Cuphead's soul. I was a fan of this episode as it had a lot going on, the potential for the brothers to be in danger, whilst also showing us the devil and King Dice. The ending of it changed the direction of the story, which I thought was crucial for the overall development of the plot and narrative. The song where the devil and Stickler were stuck in the elevator has to be one of my favourite moments too. Episode 9, Dead Broke. This episode saw Miss Chalice return to the season for the second time. Based on the ending of episode 2 when she turned into a ghost, it now allowed the brothers to ask her questions about if she had powers and if she was a ghost. It was here where we found out that she could fly through things, pick things up, turn invisible, possess people, and also do a haunting move that we saw her utilize when she was inside of the haunted house. We saw all three of them go and get ice cream where they didn't have $1, hence the episode title Dead Broke, but we saw them devise a scam where Chalice would enter a house, pretend to make it haunted, and then the brothers would knock and pretend to be ghost catchers, and they'd get 25 cents for removing the ghost. We saw them carry the scam out on Sally's stage play, which was an interesting one to see as she got a small feature. It got to the point where they had enough money for ice cream, but we saw that they wanted a little extra for sprinkles, and they then decided to head to a house that already looked derelict and haunted. This was where Chalice awoke the Bernabarm quadruplets, who had been trapped inside of a portrait for 100 years. They set out to trap the brothers and Chalice before midnight for the next 100 years, and this was then when we saw a battle commence between them all. But the brothers and Chalice eventually won. However, they lost their money in the portrait, showing that it was all for nothing. This was an okay episode. It wasn't my favourite, and probably one of my least favourites out of them all, as I thought it felt a little predictable when they were in the house and it was quite obvious that they were going to make it out alive. Plus, I wasn't really a huge fan of the boss. Episode 10. Rats All Folks. Werner Werman has made it onto the Cuphead Show, and this was almost like a Tom and Jerry episode, with the brothers taking on the role of Tom, and Werner taking on the role of Jerry. The brothers left the door open, which enabled them to come in, and he had the aim of staking claim to the house bit by bit. We saw him evade all of the traps that Cuphead and Mugman set, and we saw his technical skills in being able to create weapons that he was able to use on the brothers, whilst also having a cunning attitude in being able to talk his way out of the situations, being extremely present on screen. Werner was one of my favourite characters to be included in the season, as it felt like there was a level of depth there to the point where you understood him and his intentions. I loved the fact that we got to see his signature tin can tank in the episode too. The creativity was clear to see in this episode, and I thought it was funny when Elder Kettle got involved in taking him out, and it was then revealed to us that Werner Werman was an imposter and not actually German, as he had a strong American accent. You could see the level of hatred Elder Kettle had for rats when he destroyed the house to make sure that Werner would leave. Episode 11. Say Cheese. This was the most intimate episode in the whole season, where it just contained Elder Kettle, Cuphead, and Mugman. We kept seeing the brothers bicker when all Elder Kettle wanted to do was get a family portrait, something they hadn't had done in a while. With it being delayed and now taking place later on in the day, we saw them pose in front of a sunset on a billboard when the current print fell off after the brothers were fighting, and it exposed an old poster of Elder Kettle as a baby modeling for some diapers. It was a poster that haunted him, and he thought he destroyed all of them in the past. You could see the reaction from Cuphead and Mugman, and they wanted to get it printed off so they'd be able to laugh at it forever. However, Elder Kettle had different intentions. We saw some hilarious moments in this episode, such as when Elder Kettle took on the spider walk from The Exorcist in order to get the camera off of them, because it haunted him that much and wanted to take it off them no matter what the cost. With the brothers running out after the camera being destroyed, we saw them collide with a police car, which then saw them getting arrested. Cuphead and Mugman for escaping prison at the start of the season, and Elder Kettle for being known as the billboard burner. It rounded off nicely with them having their mugshot taken together, and Elder Kettle getting the family portrait that he wanted, even though it was slightly different to how it was originally planned. Episode 12. Lost in the Woods. Lost in the Woods was an episode that was focused around Cuphead's behaviour of not worrying about consequences due to his actions in the present day, and how it was different to Mugman's. They were collecting firewood for the harsh winter, but Cuphead was just destroying it all whilst not thinking about the damage that it could do. This led the both of them to go off into the woods to get some more to chop, but whilst out there, Cuphead destroyed the new wood, both sets of axe, and also the compass to get home. This led Mugman to walk away and leave Cuphead to his own devices, where we saw him struggle in the cold. He became a feral being that didn't really know how to survive. We saw that Mugman was able to build a cabin in the woods, which was able to hold fire, and also cook a pie to keep him warm. With Cuphead coming across him, we saw that he was betrayed yet again, as he locked Mugman out, ate the pie, and left him to freeze. As Mugman was about to destroy his cabin with Cuphead inside, we saw that he was in fact behind him, and his cabin was obliterated, leaving both of them exposed to the harsh bitter cold. But thankfully, Elder Kettle was able to get them home and take them back to the cottage, as they weren't actually that far from home. I liked this episode. It was a good one that I feel shone a light on the relationship of the brothers, and how different they both are at their core despite being similar on the exterior. It also showed the naivety of both of them, in the sense that even Mugman can be drawn into doing silly things from time to time. It was a soft but good penultimate episode of the season. Episode 13, The Devil's Pitchfork. The final episode of the season definitely delivered. We witnessed the devil sulking over the fact that he didn't have the right to now take Cuphead's soul, and it was clearly getting to him. What was the icing on the cake was the review that was left about him, where it stated that they should now find somebody else that's more powerful to take the devil's place. This led him to spend the day outside of the fiery pits of hell and wreak havoc on the world, where his main intention was to make people miserable, which he did succeed in doing. Upon returning back to his lair after being proud of himself, he realized that he left his pitchfork up above, and it was found by none other than Cuphead and Mugman, where they spent the day using it to their advantage. We saw the devil return to collect it, where he saw Cuphead had burnt the surroundings. When the devil was trying to take it back, Cuphead kept shocking him to the point where he wasn't able to take it off of him. He also spilled the news that he didn't have the right to take Cuphead's soul anymore, which took an element of fear away from him. However, after relentlessly trying to get the pitchfork, he ended up saying that he would take something that Cuphead cared about away, to which we then saw Mugman tied up and being taken down to hell in the elevator, leaving Cuphead looking upset as the episode finished, and it then cut to black. The ending to the season reconnected to the main story and finished similarly to how season 1 did. However, now, Cuphead was on his own. He's likely going to have to answer to Elder Kettle, and we'll see him go down into hell with the intention of striking up a deal to get Mugman back to the world where he belongs. I thought this season was great. Do I think it was as good as the first season? I'm not 100% sure. It definitely lacked something, but I think it was just because the first season was so good. This one felt like it contained a lot of mini stories in the world, and not as many connected to the main overarching story, but it still worked and was extremely enjoyable. So, there you have it. The Cuphead Show Season 2, every episode breakdown and review. If you want to see more videos on Cuphead, such as a review of Season 1, character breakdowns, and theories and predictions, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of Season 2 of the show? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.